Well, thank you very much to all of our viewers for joining in and watching the latest episode of the TPA podcast. We are very fortunate today to have with us two congressmen, Representative Budd from the great state of North Carolina and also Representative Buck from the great state of Colorado. So thank you, Congressman, for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Congressman, we know you've been working very hard to try and bring sort of desperately needed relief to families and businesses during these unprecedented times. And we all appreciate all of the work that you're doing. And I have to say, in stark contrast, unfortunately, to some of your colleagues who seem more intent on pushing funding for their own personal pet projects and radical ideological campaigns rather than helping the American people. So one of the pieces of legislation you've both introduced to try and help restart the economy is the Getting Americans Back to Work Act. So Congressman Budd, can you just tell our viewers what exactly this act does and why it's so important to get the economy rolling again?
And that was me. We have similar last names. So yeah, we got 38 million unemployed because of COVID-19 and the voluntary shutdown. And so look, it was very good to do the CARES Act. It wasn't a perfect bill, but there was some unintended consequences in that people are getting paid more being unemployed than they were while employed. And all that we want to do is just cap it, that they can't make more while unemployed than they were when they were having their regular job. We don't want to create a backwards incentive, and we want to make it easier for people to get back into the workplace and not to have these backwards incentives.
So, Congressman Buck, can you maybe explain to people how capping unemployment benefits and under the current CARES Act, there is this disincentive to work? Just to spell this out and why this is going to hurt getting our economy back on track.
Sure. One of the issues that we're dealing with right now, and one of the feedback that I'm getting from businesses in Colorado is that as businesses start to reopen in Colorado, as restaurants are opening and landscaping businesses and barber shops, they're having a tough time getting their employees to come back that they had 3-4 months ago, because those employees are making more money with unemployment and the other benefits that they're receiving under the CARES Act than they would if they were employed. And the problem with that is the getting this economy up and going again is one of the essential parts of what we do in Congress and what the president wants to accomplish. And it's important to get people back to work for a variety of reasons, but the disincentive that Representative Budd was talking about earlier is going to be felt throughout the economy. So getting these folks to capping the benefits to folks at the same level that they would have made otherwise is the fair thing to do when they are forced out of work by the governor's reaction to the pandemic. But allowing them to make more money and not go back to work is unfair to the employers, unfair to the economy, and ultimately creates a dead situation and a weak economy.
And Congressman, I was reading an article that in your home state of Colorado, people, unless they're earning $30 an hour, which discounts a lot of the percentage for the economy, they're earning more. I mean, I was talking to a friend of mine a couple of days ago who was recently, unfortunately, laid off, and she's earning considerably more on unemployment than she is on, than she was when she was working. So it seems like absolute common sense that we shouldn't be paying people not to work than to work. Was this just an innocent mistake in the drafting, Congressman, or was there something a little bit more sinister to this? Because I think to all of our viewers, it would just be absolutely crazy that you can be paid more at the moment to not work than to work.
Sure. So I think it started out as an innocent mistake in the Senate. And there are many mistakes that are made in the Senate all the time. And usually the House catches those and improves the legislation. But the reality here is that because this is an election year, it's a presidential election year, the Democrats in the House thought they would gain politically if they were actually paying people more for staying out of work. And they have touted the great benefits that they have delivered to the American people. What we realized from the early years of the Obama administration is that when you disincentivize work, people will act rationally and will not go back to work. And it's certainly occurring here in Colorado, as you've read about.
So, Congressman Budd, do you think, like, I look at this and see the need for businesses to start reopening, but is this a backhanded way of trying to increase the minimum wage? Because businesses will be forced to try and raise their wages to try and compete with welfare. Businesses won't be able to afford this, of course, because they're just going to keep shutting their doors, because on razor thin margins, as we see at the moment, you simply can't afford to pay people the rates that this will do. So is this, do you think, a way of just increasing the minimum wage by stealth?
I would agree with Congressman Buck that it started out innocent, but it sure does look strategic. When you look at the timing of when this ends and how close it is to the November elections, and would it push Democrats to want to offer more and more incentives and then use that as leverage to increase a national wage or some sort of a living wage, which I believe it was Yang thought, who would have thought that something that I was promoting as a presidential candidate would now be part of the national dialogue. So we see that, and I think the timing is quite suspicious. And whether it was intentional at the beginning or not, I can certainly say that now it certainly leads to that discussion, which is very scary. We need people back into the marketplace. We need to understand some of the damages that something, while it sounds good on its face, a minimum wage is actually harmful to those at the bottom, and as far as their skill sets and market value bring to the economy. Those are the people that get hurt the worst. It's almost like sawing the legs off of a ladder, or sawing the rungs off of a ladder. And you got to be really tall to hit that first step. But for those that can't reach that first rung, they're in a lot of trouble. And that's what the damage that minimum wages do.
Absolutely. And what we're going to see as a direct result of this is, long term, it's going to hurt the most vulnerable in our society. It's going to hurt the most sort of minority groups. It's going to hurt the least skilled people, because, as you completely correctly say, it's just taking those rungs away from them, in addition to the fact that businesses simply won't reopen. So we're going to have, as a result of this, more closed businesses, more people unable to work, and it'll be worse, not just for the economy, but also for society. So moving back to Congressman Buck, this is something that I think, Republican or Democrat, almost everyone should agree with, because, putting partisan politics aside, having people in work, once it's safe to do so, and that differs state by state, having people working rather than on welfare seems like something we should all agree on. What can people do to try and help make this common sense law a reality, if you can tell our viewers what they should do?
Sure, I think that everyone needs to contact their member of Congress, their senators. I think the most important thing that citizens can do is to make sure that members of Congress know, and not just by email or by calling, but when there are virtual town halls, when there are opportunities to see people in small groups, it's really important that members of Congress get that more personal interaction rather than just an email or a phone call. This is such an important bill, and it's so important to getting our economy up and going again. People should, if they are part of an association like a realtors group, they should make sure that their group is speaking out, because again, when we hear from large groups of people, whether it's a medical association or whether it's a realtors association or construction groups, we know that there's more than just one vote there, and there's more than just a particular interest. It is a broad interest. And so I would encourage people to work in a diverse way to make sure that the message is getting to DC.
I think that's an excellent suggestion in terms of trying to get to trade associations and other groups. The other thing that I would add is, we all talk about the economic cost, but, and Representative Budd, to turn this over to you, The economic cost is also a human cost. Like, there is a human death toll when it comes to shutdowns. There is a human toll when it comes to people's mental health, but also people's livelihoods and people's life expectancy the longer that this keeps going. So in a way, it's not just a question of shutdowns versus the economy, because the economy is also people's lives. So in terms of us trying to restart the economy, we're also trying to do something that will benefit and save lives. And Representative Budd, if you wanted to add anything to Representative Buck's comments on how we can and our viewers can work together on this.
Yeah, I think you bring up a great point, Tim. You know, what we do is we shut down the economy to help people survive, but we're now realizing that the very means of survival is work and the economy that all of us engage in and day out, and large businesses and small businesses and everything in between, and solo entrepreneurs. So everything in between are participating in the economy. So we need to remember that that is the means of survival. It's not a government paycheck. It's people's own. It's not a government check. It's people's own paycheck. So we need to remember that there is dignity in work, and that work is a means to survival, even more than we would contribute to survival by shutting down the economy. And I think we've hit that tipping point. Different states are realizing it at different rates, and it's time to reopen. And I hope people realize that we can walk and chew gum as a nation. We can reopen. We can keep the most vulnerable safe, and we can still we can continue to grow our economy and get back to where we were just 3 or 4 months ago, which is the best economy in 50 years.
Absolutely. And I shudder to think where we would be if we didn't pass some of the legislation in terms of tax reform and deregulation that we did a couple of years ago, which was exactly why our economy is so strong. We are in a fortunate position that we were able to restart the economy a couple of years ago after years of Obama's decay, with the Trump tax cuts and all of the deregulation that we've seen that have put us in a position to weather this unprecedented storm. So, Congressman, I know you are both very, very busy, and I shan't take up any more of your time, but any final words, Congressman Buck?
Well, I just want to echo what my friend from North Carolina said, and that is that there is dignity in work, and that we as Americans are natural workers, and we are producers, and we take great pride in the fact that our economy is so strong, and our neighborhoods are so vibrant. And when we disincentivize that, it is an un-American activity, and we need to make sure we change that. And I thank you very much for having us on, and I appreciate the audience for tuning in.
Congressman Budd?
Yeah, again, Tim, thank you for hosting today. And again, Congressman Buck, great to be on with a great colleague from Colorado, halfway across the country. It's amazing the technology we have that we can do these things. We're a lot better off than we were 102 years ago in the 1918 pandemic. But what this reminds me of is what what Ronald Reagan said about government. The 9 scariest words are, "I'm from the government and I'm here to help." And so it seems like we did that. Look, the Paycheck Protection Program, some of the things in the CARES Act were very helpful. Not a perfect bill, but a good bill. But there are pieces in this which are typical of government in that they do more harm than good. And that's what we're trying to reverse with our bill and getting Americans back to work.
Well, thank you very much, Congressman, both of you, for your time. And to all of our viewers, please listen to I would strongly encourage you, the advice that you were given. Don't just contact your congressman, but contact your trade association, contact any employer groups or employee groups that you're part of, and try and convince them to take action in Congress, because this is critical to us restarting our economy. It's critical to us getting people back to work and the human effects that this will have. And we were proud to do our small part as a Taxpayers Protection Alliance to lead a coalition letter of 15 organizations supporting this great bill. But please, to all of our viewers, do the same thing. Do anything you can, because this is just common sense. Like, we need this. This is something we desperately need to do. So anything our viewers can do to help make this happen, please do so. Once again, Congressman, thank you both for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tim.